They forgot my birthday. Not in a cute, distracted way. Not because they were planning a surprise or pretending to build suspense. They just forgot. No call. No text. Not even a lazy Facebook comment. And it wasn't just anyone. It was my wife. My kids. My own mother, who still called my brother her miracle. I sat through a family dinner that evening, same house, same laughter, same table I helped build, and no one said a word. They talked about promotions. About Megan's new boyfriend. About the cruise my brother and his wife had just booked. Someone even joked that I finally looked relaxed, for once. That was the punchline. I was the punchline. I brought dessert, like always. Homemade lemon bars. No one touched them. At one point, my son asked if I was still doing that tech thing. He meant the software I'd spent years building. The thing that kept a roof over their heads. I said yeah, still at it. He nodded once, like I'd said I watered plants for a living. When I stood to leave, no one even looked up. That's when it hit me. I was invisible in a room full of people who shared my blood. The drive home was quiet. I turned the radio off. Listened to the road. The tires. The wind leaking through the window sill. All of it louder than any of their voices in my memory. At home, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. The lemon bars sat untouched on the counter. My wife came in, took off her earrings, and asked if I had a good time. I said sure. She kissed my forehead and turned off the light, fell asleep within minutes. I stared at the ceiling and counted every moment I'd shown up for them. The loans. The late-night drives. The hours on hold with insurance. The Christmases I paid for when no one else could chip in. And yet, none of it ever counted. I wasn't the loud one. I wasn't the dramatic one. I didn't drink too much or scream at dinner or chase attention. I was steady, predictable, useful, and completely unseen. That night, I didn't get angry. I didn't cry. I just made a quiet decision. They would never get the chance to forget me again. Not because I'd yell. Not because I'd force their attention. Because I would leave, slowly, deliberately, and become someone they'd never be allowed to reach again. And when they finally remembered, I wouldn't be there. The next morning, I didn't storm out. I didn't slam any doors or write bitter letters. I made coffee, took a shower, kissed my wife on the cheek as she scrolled through her phone. She didn't look up. In the weeks that followed, I became a background character in my own life, by design. At first, it was little things. I stopped volunteering to fix things around the house. Let the hallway light bulb stay burnt out. Left the squeaky door hinges as they were. I didn't refill the gas in my wife's car. Didn't ask my daughter how her art competition went. Just watched from a distance. Observed. The silence grew, but no one seemed to notice. Or care. At work, I did the opposite. I leaned in. Hard. For years, I had kept my software consultancy intentionally low-key, enough to pay the bills, support the family, stay stable. I never chased glory. I didn't network much. Didn't brand myself. That was a younger man's game, I thought. But something in me shifted. I began coding at night. Reading again. Updating old frameworks, rewriting back-end systems I'd abandoned out of burnout or boredom. I reached out to old contacts, some who owed me favors, others who barely remembered me but respected my work. I took on small contracts, built clean and fast, over-delivered every time. And people noticed. Within 6 months, I had a solid stream of clients. A friend from Austin asked if I could fly out to help him pitch a B2B platform I'd quietly helped him design. The meeting went well enough that I was offered a CTO role on the spot. Not in name, in equity. Quiet, behind the scenes. My kind of role. I took it. I never told my family. They thought I was still freelancing, still barely getting by. I let them think that. They didn't ask about details. They never had. Around that time, I moved out. No fight. No shouting match. I told my wife I needed space to figure things out. She blinked, nodded, said she understood. She didn't ask where I was going. Didn't ask when I'd be back. I packed a single suitcase and moved into a modest loft 2 towns over. Quiet. Clean. Mine. My son didn't call. My daughter didn't text. My mother sent me a photo of a new wreath she'd made for the front door. No mention of me being gone. As if I were on vacation. Or in another room. And so, I kept building. Over the next year, our startup grew fast. We locked in our first round of funding. Hired lean. Built strong. My name never appeared publicly. But inside the industry, people were starting to whisper it again. Clients knew. Engineers knew. Investors knew. I became a guest speaker at a private tech roundtable. A minor publication did a spotlight article on our anonymous genius. They didn't use my real name, at my request. But my face was there. Side profile, half-lit. It circulated on LinkedIn. On Twitter. In quiet corners of the web. I didn't check my personal social media. Hadn't in months. But one evening, out of morbid curiosity, I logged in. Messages. Dozens. Not from strangers. From my family. My wife. Saw the article. Proud of you. Maybe we could catch up. My mother. You always were the smart one. So glad the world finally sees it. My son, after nearly a year of silence. Didn't know you were working on something that big. That's awesome, Dad. And the kicker. A group message titled, Family Reunion Plans, that I was suddenly added to, asking if I'd be back home in time for Thanksgiving. Back home. That word stopped me cold. Because the truth was, I'd been home for a while now. Just not with them. I stared at the screen. At the sudden wave of praise, curiosity, nostalgia, all of it so eager. So hollow. No one had reached out when I left. No one checked if I was okay. No one cared when I was small. But now that my name was on screens. Now I mattered. I closed the app. Shut the laptop. Poured myself a drink. And for the first time in my entire life, I said out loud. I don't need them. Not in anger. Not in sadness. Just, fact. It was late autumn when the first real attempt came. Not just a message. Not just a tag in some generic group chat. A real effort, or at least, their version of it. I had just wrapped up a call with one of our European clients when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't spoken to in well over a year, Claire, my sister. We were never particularly close, but family's family, right? She used to say that to me every Christmas when I'd be the only one helping wash dishes while everyone else drank by the fire. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Hey, I know it's been a while. I saw that article about you. That's amazing. You always had it in you, I guess. Listen, Mom's birthday is coming up, and we're planning a little surprise party at her place. She'd really love to see you. We all would. That last line hit a nerve. We all would. Funny. A year ago, I could have been living under a bridge, and none of them would have blinked. But now I had equity, visibility, whispers of influence. Now they all would. I didn't return the call. But I did think about it. There was a part of me, the old part, the loyal son, the quiet provider, that wondered if maybe this was the moment. Maybe they finally saw me. Maybe things could heal. Then I remembered something small. Insignificant on its own. It was the way my mother used to talk about my brother, James. The golden boy. The loud one. The successful failure, as I called him. Always in debt, always recovering from some business misstep, yet somehow always the center of attention. She'd gush over him. Brag about him. Call him resilient. When I got promoted years ago, I told her over the phone. She paused, said, "That's nice," and changed the subject to what James was up to. That memory ended the debate. I didn't go to the birthday party. Instead, I sent flowers. Nothing showy. Just enough to be polite. The next day, I got a text from Claire. "You should have come." She cried. Said she missed you. No mention of where that version of my mother had been when I was sleeping on an air mattress in a shared loft, rebuilding my life from the ashes of their indifference. I started noticing a pattern. People I hadn't heard from in years, cousins, in-laws, old family friends, suddenly found excuses to reach out. Just checking in. Saw your name pop up. We should catch up sometime. It was all so transactional. Like they sensed I had value now. Like I was a stock they'd once written off, now rising again, and they didn't want to miss out on the profits. Then came the real test. My daughter, Emily, sent me a message. Simple. Direct. "I'm sorry. I miss you. Can we talk?" That one hurt. Not because I didn't love her. I always had. Still did. But she was an adult now. 25. And for years, she'd parroted her mother's dismissive tone. Called me overdramatic when I voiced concerns. Said I made everything about me when I asked to be acknowledged. The last time we spoke in person, she accused me of bailing on the family when I moved out. Said I was cold. That I gave up. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I waited 3 days. Then I wrote back, "You're not wrong. I did leave. But not because I wanted to hurt anyone. I left because I realized staying hurt me more than it helped any of you." She read it. Didn't reply. A week later, I got a letter. Handwritten. From my mother. Inside was a photo of our old family cabin, the one I used to repair every summer, unpaid, while everyone else drank and sunbathed. Alongside it, a note. "I see you now. I truly do. I'm sorry it took this long." I stared at the paper for a long time, ran my fingers over the ink, wondered if she wrote it because she meant it, or because someone told her to. But the truth? It didn't matter anymore. Because something had changed in me, something permanent. I no longer needed their recognition, their validation, their sudden warmth after years of emotional winter. I had built something real. And I had done it alone. The version of me they wanted now. He didn't exist for them anymore. Thanksgiving came. And with it, another group message. This time from my brother, James, the one who'd once mocked me in front of everyone for working with wires and websites. "Hey man, we're putting together a real feast this year. You should stop by. I mean it." He even added a smiley face. I didn't reply. But the invitation gnawed at me. Not because I wanted to go, but because I wanted to see what they would do if I did. What they would say, not just now that I was useful again, but now that they knew I didn't need them. So I showed up. I wore a jacket they'd never seen, sharp, tailored, simple. Drove a car they didn't know I owned. It wasn't flashy, just clean, professional. Quiet success, the kind that doesn't need to be explained. When I walked through the front door, it felt like stepping onto a stage. My mother gasped. James gave me the kind of half-hug you give someone who might be famous now. My ex-wife, yes, we'd quietly finalized everything 6 months ago, looked up from the kitchen like she'd seen a ghost. She was wearing an apron. Her hair was tied up the same way it had been the night she told me I was too distant to be interesting. Emily dropped her fork. No one said anything for a few seconds. Then the floodgates opened. "We were just talking about you. I read that article, incredible stuff. You look great, healthy." I smiled, said thank you, sat at the table like I hadn't been written off just a year ago. The meal went on. Turkey, stuffing, small talk. I answered questions when asked, deflected the rest. Let them project what they needed onto me. But underneath the surface, I watched. Measured. James tried to joke like old times, but his eyes kept darting to my watch, to my shoes. My mother kept calling me, darling, a word I hadn't heard from her mouth since I was 10. Even Emily, the only one whose voice trembled when she spoke, kept looking like she wanted to say something she couldn't. It all felt too late. Like actors remembering their lines halfway through the final act. Then came dessert. And with it, a toast. My mother stood and raised her glass. Said she wanted to make a statement. A moment of appreciation, as she put it. To the son who showed us what quiet strength looks like. We are so proud. And we're so lucky he's still part of this family. People clinked glasses. Nodded. Smiled. And I sat there, holding mine, untouched. It wasn't anger I felt. It was clarity. Because in that moment, I realized what they were really toasting, their own ability to pretend none of it ever happened. To rewrite history. To call my absence a rough patch. To pretend they had always believed in me. So I cleared my throat. And I said this, softly, without raising my voice. I appreciate the sentiment. Truly. But I'm not back. I'm just passing through. The silence that followed was different from the one I'd known before. This one was heavy. A silence filled with regret. I stood, set my glass down, and looked at each of them. Not with spite. Not with judgment. Just goodbye. Then I left. Didn't take any leftovers. Didn't hug anyone. Didn't look back. That night, I drove until I reached the cabin, the one from the photo. Mine now. I'd bought it quietly the year before. Renovated it. Modernized it. Kept the bones but gave it new life. I lit a fire. Made coffee. Sat on the porch and watched the wind move through the trees. And for the first time, I felt what I'd never known in that old house full of people who shared my name. Peace. 2 weeks passed after Thanksgiving. Then came the first letter. It wasn't handwritten. It came in a pale blue envelope with my mother's familiar, shaky script on the front, the kind she used for birthdays back when I still got cards. Inside was a folded piece of stationery and a single line. You didn't have to make us feel so small. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No reflection. No acknowledgement of what they had done, just the sting of wounded pride disguised as grief. It didn't hurt. Not anymore. I didn't respond. But they kept trying. Claire sent a photo of an old family trip. James texted me an article about a startup that had just failed, followed by, "Looks like you picked the right side after all, huh?" Even Emily called. This time, I answered. She didn't ask how I was. She asked if I hated her. That question hung in the air between us like fog, heavy and hard to breathe through. I told her I didn't. That I never had. But I also said I didn't trust her anymore. Not because she'd taken sides, but because, when I had needed her most, she hadn't asked a single question. She'd just gone along with everyone else. Like silence cost less than standing up. She cried. I didn't. It wasn't coldness. It was closure. I told her I forgave her. But I wouldn't forget. After that, I stopped taking calls. I didn't need to explain myself again. I wasn't interested in hearing the versions of the story where I was suddenly misunderstood instead of dismissed. Where my absence became their regret, and their regret somehow made them the victims. The truth was, they didn't want me back. They wanted who I'd become. But who I'd become existed because I left them behind. They couldn't have both. That winter, I did something unexpected. I made a donation, anonymous, but sizable, to the hospital where my mother volunteered. Enough to fund a new wing in her program. I requested it be named in honor of my grandfather, the only person in that family who had ever made me feel seen. It made the local news. My mother's picture was in the article. She smiled for the camera. But her eyes looked somewhere else. Like she was still trying to solve a puzzle she hadn't realized was made without her. The message was clear. I didn't hate them. I hadn't ruined their lives. But I also wasn't theirs anymore. And they could keep trying to rewrite the past, dress it in warm toasts and forced smiles, but I wasn't stepping back into their narrative. Because the man they wanted to welcome home, he had outgrown the front porch years ago. Spring came early that year. The trees around the cabin bloomed 2 weeks ahead of schedule. The lake thawed sooner than expected. The morning air lost its bite, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I started each day with the windows open. That was when they showed up. Not one by one. Not with fanfare. But together. In one car. I saw it pull up from the kitchen window, a silver SUV I recognized from my sister's Instagram posts. The same one she'd taken to wine country last year. The same one she hadn't offered when I was moving out of the house I'd paid off. Claire stepped out first. Then my mother. Slower now. Thinner. Holding something in her hands, a box. A photo album. And then. Emily. No James. I opened the door before they could knock. Claire smiled. Forced. We were in the area. They weren't. Emily said nothing. Just looked down at her shoes. My mother cleared her throat. We were hoping, maybe we could talk. I stepped aside. Let them in. Not out of warmth. Out of curiosity. They sat in the living room, the same one I'd built with my own hands. Not metaphorically. Literally. The beams, the shelves, the stone fireplace, all of it crafted in the silence they gave me when I disappeared. They looked around like they were trying to understand who I'd become by examining my walls. I offered tea. No one accepted. Finally, my mother spoke. We miss you. I nodded. You have every right to be angry, she added. We know we failed you. Do you? Because the last time I heard her voice before this, it was wrapped around the words, you didn't have to make us feel so small. Claire tried next. Things could be different. We've all changed. But had they? Or had they just been left out long enough to realize the party continued without them? Then Emily. Her voice barely a whisper. I want to know you again. That one hurt. Not in the old way. Not with the desperation I used to feel. But in the way a healed scar stings in the cold, a dull, persistent reminder of what once was. I looked at them. 3 women who had once called me dramatic, distant, difficult, now sitting in my home like visitors in a museum they couldn't touch. And I told them the truth. I said I forgave them. Not out of grace, but necessity. Carrying their mistakes had become too heavy. I had put them down. And I wasn't picking them up again. I told them I wished them peace. But that peace would not include me. They cried. Or at least, their eyes glistened with something that looked like sorrow. My mother placed the photo album on the table. Just in case you ever want to remember. I didn't open it. I walked them to the door. hugged Claire, touched my mother's shoulder, looked at Emily and said, "I hope you never forget how this feels. Because I won't." And then they were gone. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the lake catch the last orange glow of the setting sun. I thought of the younger version of me, the one who waited for birthday calls, who carried everyone's burdens, who begged to be seen. I thought about how long he waited for someone to care. And how he finally stopped, not to punish them, but to protect himself. They wanted me back. But they wanted the old version, the man who gave without asking, stayed without question, forgave without reflection. That man was gone. And in his place stood someone who had finally learned the difference between being needed and being valued.